But at the end of the day, the main thing you need to know is if it's affecting you negatively, then go ahead and get help. And what does it even matter whether you call it binge eating or overeating? Welcome to the Free from Binge Eating podcast with me, Brid, your host. Binge eating sucks. Trust me, I know. I was stuck in that spiral of binging, restricting, dieting, yo-yoing weight loss, feeling guilty and ashamed and hating my body for 10 years. Now that I'm out, I'm turning my pain into purpose by helping you stop binging, start loving your body, self, and life again. It's time to live free from binge eating. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey there, how are you feeling today? So let's talk a little bit about this question that I get fairly often in the DMs, and that is, am I actually a binge eater? So it's you guys wondering, am I really struggling with binge eating disorder, or am I just an overeater? Am I just going a bit overboard sometimes, and maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic about it or something? Before I jump into discussing this a little bit and how to navigate this question, let me just share a little bit about my experience. It might help you out. So for me, I'm sure you guys have seen on my IG, I mention it all the time, but like my binge restrict journey was a solid 10 years. And I would say for sure the first year or two, I had no idea that I had no idea what I was really going through. I definitely didn't really know this word binge or binge eating disorder, that it was a thing. So to me, it was just, I was eating way too much and I was feeling really out of control. I was feeling all the effects of binge eating, but I just didn't identify with, I didn't know what it was. Then as the years went by and it just really became a very, very big problem in my life, I guess I started Googling and I probably found out the word binge eating, but I still didn't know it was an actual disorder. And by then I'd probably understood that I was binge eating just by the description of what it is. And I'll go into that in a little bit. But I still never really realized that it was like a full-on eating disorder. To me, eating disorders were like these super extreme things where it was only like really overweight people or really underweight people, and that just wasn't me. So I just still was kind of thinking like, oh, there's just something wrong with me. I need to figure this out myself, like simple as that. And I don't think I ever actually, like in the 10 years, identified with having this actual eating disorder that has an actual healing plan. It was only pretty much since I started this account that I've actually realized, looking back, that I really had an eating disorder. And that was a relief in itself, just seeing that what I went through wasn't just me. It wasn't me being crazy and alone in this mess that was my life, and that was binge eating. So sometimes realizing that you are binge eating or that you do have some disordered eating can be helpful. Just relieving to know it's not just you and there's an action plan, there's a way out. So what I'm saying is, if by the end of this podcast you realize, actually, I think I am binge eating, it's not just overeating, then no need to freak out. If anything, you can see it as a positive in that there is a way out and there's lots and lots of help. So let's get into this discussion of how to navigate the question of, am I actually a binge eater? So let's start off with a very formal way of approaching this topic, and that is comparing the definition of binge eating and overeating. I'm just looking up online. The two main symptoms of binge eating disorder are eating a larger than normal amount of food over a short period of time and feeling that this behavior is out of control. And then a few more symptoms of binge eating are feeling uncomfortably full, eating faster than normal, eating when not hungry, feelings of disgust, guilt, or sadness, and eating alone out of embarrassment. And actually, in order to be officially diagnosed with binge eating disorder, people must also experience distress and experience at least one binge eating episode once a week for 3 months. So it's pretty consistent. It's a recurring behavior. Overeating, on the other hand, so it can sometimes be confused, right? And the real difference is that with binge eating, food is consumed in a faster, more rapid manner, and you feel complete loss of control over the amount of food that's consumed. And you have all of those feelings of disgust, regret, and guilt after the episode. And importantly, it's done alone due to embarrassment over the amount of food that's consumed. So overeating, you may feel full, you may feel slight regret and that, oh, this kind of went overboard, but you're not feeling this extreme distress of like disgust and regret and guilt. And you rarely do it alone out of embarrassment, and it's much less consistently occurring. There we have the official definition of binge eating disorder and the sort of differences between it and overeating. This alone might already give you the answer of whether you're binging or overeating. But let's hop into discussing a few points that can help you make the decision, have the realization if you haven't yet realized. So the first thing I really want to touch on is that it looks different for everyone. So I had a one-to-one client ask me recently, she said, so I don't really know if for sure I'm binge eating or I'm overeating. Like, is my version of overeating a binge to you, or is my binge just overeating to you? Because she never really, she was kind of wanting to compare it to check if it was binge eating. But what I want to point out that it's not about comparing it to someone else. You could have a woman who's 5 foot, she's a petite frame, and her sort of like natural calorie intake is like half of some 7 foot basketball player, right? So her version of binging to him would just be like probably like a decent sized meal. So it's really not about trying to compare to others in that sense. And then not just like food wise, but physically, you might think, oh, I can't possibly be a binge eater because I don't look like one. You might have in your mind what's expected of a binge eater. It might be someone who's very overweight, or maybe you even think of someone who's underweight because maybe they compensate through purging and they're sort of trapped in a bit of a bulimia cycle as well. And so very rarely does the image of a fairly normal, I'm using quotation marks, looking person describe to you what a binge eater looks like. So if you feel like you're in that middle ground, you might not even feel comfortable calling yourself a binge eater, because if you identify with that and you tell others, well, they're probably not going to believe you, or they're just going to say, yeah, we all overeat sometimes, babe, like it's normal. And because you don't fit what most people expect to see, they might also not validate your experience. Let's take a short break from all this juicy goodness. I'd love to share a little bit about my one-to-one coaching program. This program is the bomb. It's a 12-week program where I guide and support you to healing. If you're just done with dieting, being obsessed with your weight, feeling guilty binge after binge, and you're just sick and tired of seeing your body in the mirror and just hating what you see, you're scared of your next binge, you hate cancelling on social events because you feel crappy about yourself, you're constantly planning the next detox, the next cleanse or diet to lose weight. You never want to wake up still feeling stuffed and bloated and ashamed after the night before. You hate hiding it from your family and friends, sneaking food packets in and out of your room, waiting till people leave the house to binge. You're so over being jealous of people who just seem to be able to eat normally and don't think about food all the time, planning their next meal and what they're going to eat. You don't want to feel out of control anymore. So, in one sentence, if you want to stop binging once and for all, my one-to-one program is made for you. We go through my proven 4-pillar framework to heal you, to get you over binging, back to loving your body again, and so much more than that, to being your most authentic and best self again. Confident, relaxed, self-loving. Now, if you're looking for a quick fix, this is definitely not for you. If you're not ready to dive deep and do the real work, this is not for you. It's not surface level stuff, it's intense at times, but that is where transformation happens. We're not just changing at a behavioral level, we're going to the root of the cause. So we're finding long-lasting, real change. One recent one-to-one client wrote a testimonial saying, "Although I just recently started working with the one-to-one coaching, I was honestly kind of doubtful before starting that anything could have the chance of working for me, but I'm already more optimistic in what's to come. After trying many things previously that honestly just feel like they do nothing, with the one-to-ones, it's more about taking actions, learning things that you can actually apply, and being supported in doing them, rather than just feeling like you keep talking but going nowhere. I'm also very shy and have a very hard time with talking, so I was very scared to start. I didn't want it to end up like anything I've tried before, and just after the first session, it became a lot less intimidating after realizing what it actually is." Okay, I'll leave it there. Let's get back into today's episode. Don't compare your size of binge to others. It's what feels like a binge to you, and we'll go into that in a bit. And don't worry about needing to look the part to also be able to know if you're a binge eater or not. Then I want to look at this idea of it being a spectrum. Sometimes you might overeat and sometimes you might binge eat. It's all on the spectrum of really like emotional eating. On the one end, it's people who very rarely emotional eat and they mainly see food as fuel, and they don't have this tie between food and emotions, and it doesn't soothe them in the way that it might for binge eaters. Then in the middle ground and a bit further up, there's some overeating every now and then. It's not consistent. Sometimes maybe you go to a party and you eat more cake than you usually would, or maybe you're stressed after an exam or a tough work day and you overeat. Then further up the scale, you've got binge eating and like full-on binge eating multiple times a week, and it's really taking over your life. So it's really a spectrum. The two key elements of what determines where you are on the spectrum are control and consequence. So this is where you can sort of understand, am I binge eating or what or not? Look at control. Do you feel, and this goes back right to the definition, do you feel loss of control in these binging episodes or these eating sessions? And do you feel that there are negative consequences afterwards? Do you feel that distress, the guilt, the disgust, the sadness, the anger? And do you feel the physical consequences of feeling painfully stuffed, feeling bloated the next morning? Your digestion maybe is a bit messed up. You are gaining weight rapidly. You're finding it difficult to not gain weight, all that kind of stuff. So it's really asking yourself those two questions honestly and candidly, and understanding where on the spectrum you're at. Then we've got the idea that it is really all subjective. The answer comes from within you. Never be afraid to ask for help, no matter how small you think it is relative to others. So stop comparing your binging experience to others. It's about how it is for you. The most painful thing you've gone through, your maximum pain experience, even if for you the worst thing you've experienced is a breakup, versus someone else has lost a parent. It's not about you saying, "Oh yeah, but mine isn't that bad because that person had that happen to them." And it happens with, it's the same thing with binging. You don't need to compare it to someone else and say, "Oh yeah, but mine isn't that bad because that person eats twice as much as I do." What's the most pain that you know that you've experienced? It's relative to you. That maximum pain that you're at, the binge that you're at, where it's feeling out of control and you're having negative consequences, that still deserves help and soothing and empathy. You deserve help. No matter if you class it as a binge or overeating, the fact is, and this is the absolute like bottom line of this entire podcast episode, forget about the definition, forget about what everything looks like, what you look like. The one thing you really, really need to understand and ask yourself is this affecting me negatively? That's all you need to know. Is it? If it's a yes, then get help. That's all it comes down to. If it's making you feel like shit the next day, then get help. If it's making you gain weight and you feel out of control with your life, then get help. Like you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to be binging a certain amount. You don't have to know if it even is binging or overeating. At the end of the day, if something is really dragging you down and not letting you live your best life, then there's absolutely no problem getting help and not needing to define it in a certain way. So I'm going to leave it there today. I hope this gave you some sense of clarity and has just made you sort of realize that if this question, am I really a binge eater, if that's coming up for you and you're sort of worried about it or not quite sure, then sure, dive into it, ask these questions. But at the end of the day, the main thing you need to know is if it's affecting you negatively, then go ahead and get help. And what does it even matter whether you call it binge eating or overeating? Okay, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you next time. And that is the scoop for today. If this ep inspired you, taught you something new, or has helped give you direction in your recovery journey, it would mean the world to me if you did me a massive favor. It'll only take 2 minutes, I promise. Review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Once you've posted it, take a screenshot and DM that photo to me. I'll enter you into a monthly raffle. Yep, that's right, I ain't gonna leave you hanging. So each month I'll randomly select one lucky winner and you'll receive a free one-to-one coaching session with me. It'll be super fun and valuable. And if you'd really love to give back more to me, it'd help me build this podcast so much more and reach so many more women if you shared it with someone else who you think will love it. Maybe it's a sister, a friend, a bestie, or your mom. I love you all so much. Thanks for listening and have a beautiful day.